Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you don't want to miss how this story takes a shocking turn. Trust me, you'll be on the edge of your seat. Abuja had a rhythm of its own, a relentless pulse that hummed in every street, every car horn, every hurried footstep. For Chaik, stepping off the bus at Nyanya Park felt like stepping into a storm. He came from a small village in the east, a place where mornings smelled of dew-soaked earth and roasted yam, and nights were soft with the songs of crickets. Abuja, however, was nothing like home. It was chaos, ambition, and survival, all wrapped in dust, exhaust fumes, and the scent of opportunity. At 24, Chaik carried more than just his small backpack. He carried the weight of his family's survival. His father had died when Chaik was still a boy, leaving a sick mother and a younger sister who had just gained admission into university but couldn't afford the fees. Chaik was honest, diligent, and meticulous. A mechanic who believed that a job done well was worth more than money, but honesty rarely filled stomachs. He found a small workshop near his market, a cramped space with peeling paint and a leaky roof, and began working on cars from dawn to dusk. He repaired engines, replaced brake pads, and polished dashboards with care. Yet the money trickled in painfully slowly. He watched as other mechanics, some less skilled than him, drove flashy SUVs, wore designer shoes, and lived in apartments he could only dream of. It was during one sweltering afternoon that everything began to change. A woman stepped into his workshop, and the air seemed to shift. She was in her early 40s, elegant and confident, with streaks of gray in her hair that somehow made her even more captivating. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, yet her smile suggested a secret knowledge. "You're Chaik, right?" she asked, her voice smooth and musical. Chaik, wiping grease from his hands, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. How do you know my name?" "I know a lot," she said lightly, leaning against the hood of a car. "And I've been watching you. You're too honest, too hardworking to be making what you deserve." Chaik felt a sting of shame. She wasn't wrong. Every day he toiled, every night he counted his meager earnings, and yet someone from his own village, Emeka, a fellow mechanic, lived in luxury. New cars, designer clothes, expensive apartments. Chaik had no idea how. The woman, Nneka, seemed to read his mind. "Emeka has a secret," she said, her eyes glinting. "He doesn't just fix cars, he fixes hearts. He sleeps with wealthy women, Chaik. That's how he lives like this." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. Emeka, a gigolo? Selling his body to get rich? Chaik recoiled instinctively. The idea was vile, impossible. He had been raised to respect women, not use them. "You don't have to do it," Nneka said, sensing his horror. "But if you want to help your mother, your sister, sometimes survival demands choices we never imagined. You could change your life, Chaik. You could live freely. But the question is, how much are you willing to give up to get there?" Chaik left that day with a heavy heart. The image of his mother, coughing through the night, and his sister, crying over unpaid university fees, weighed on him. Could he sacrifice his morals for their future? Could he betray the very values he had been raised with? That night, in his tiny rented room with a leaky ceiling and a threadbare mattress, he stared at the darkness. The city buzzed outside, indifferent, uncaring. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the first stirrings of temptation and the first whisper of doubt about what it truly meant to survive in Abuja. If you're already hooked, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss how Chaik's life takes a shocking turn. The choices he makes will change everything. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the next chapter of Chaik's life is going to shock you. You'll see how far desperation can push a man and why choices have consequences. The weeks after meeting Nneka were a storm in Chaik's mind. He worked harder than ever, repairing engines and polishing cars until his hands bled and his back ached. Every night, he sent what little he could to his mother for medicine and a few naira to cover his sister's university fees. But no matter how much he worked, the pile of needs never seemed to shrink. Meanwhile, Emeka's lavish lifestyle haunted him. The flashy SUVs, the exotic trips, the designer clothes, everything seemed within reach, yet morally forbidden. Chaik replayed Neka's words over and over. Sometimes survival demands choices we never imagined. Then Neka began to visit him more often. She came under the guise of checking her car repairs, but her visits extended into long conversations over wine. She was patient, persistent, and somehow dangerously persuasive. One humid afternoon, as Chaik tightened the bolts on her vintage Lexus, Neka rested a hand on his shoulder. "Chaik," she whispered, "I can help you. You're better than this city gives you credit for. But the world doesn't reward honesty alone. Sometimes you have to do what others won't. No one will know. And your family, they'll be saved." Chaik swallowed hard. His mother's wheezing cough and his sister's desperate letters flashed in his mind. He had never considered stepping over that line, yet suddenly it felt like the only option left. The first encounter was awkward, tense, and heavy with shame. He felt like he had betrayed himself, but the money arrived almost immediately. Enough to pay for his mother's medication, his sister's tuition, and even a small savings. The relief was intoxicating. The guilt, however, was heavier. As weeks turned into months, Chaik's life changed rapidly. Other wealthy women approached him, drawn by his charm, his skill, and his unassuming nature. He was careful at first, selective. But with each encounter, the money grew, the pressure eased, and the guilt began to dull. He justified it as survival, a duty to his family. Then came Ada. He met her at a charity event, where her mother had hired him to inspect a vintage Mercedes. Ada's laughter was bright, her eyes warm, and her presence disarming. For the first time, Chaik felt something other than duty or desperation. They spent hours talking that evening, and he realized he was falling in love. Not with wealth or comfort or survival, but with her. Ada was different from the women he had been seeing. She was genuine, kind, and full of life. But love did not erase temptation. Chaik found himself balancing a dangerous double life. By day, he was the skilled, honest mechanic, gaining Ada's trust and affection. By night, he continued the affair with Neka and other wealthy women, sending money home and slowly sinking further into the world he had once resisted. Every day was a tightrope walk between guilt and desire, love and survival. Every glance from Ada reminded him of what he could lose, and every night reminded him of what he had gained. And yet, he could not stop. If you're hooked by Chaik's dangerous choices and the love story that's about to explode, hit that like button and subscribe. The consequences of his actions, and you won't believe what happens when love collides with secrets. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because what happens to Chaik in this chapter will leave you shocked. Love, betrayal, and secrets collide in ways no one could expect. Chaik's life had become a precarious balancing act. By day, he was the charming, attentive man Ada adored, a young mechanic with quiet dignity, a man who always listened, always helped, and always made her laugh. By night, he became the very person he had once sworn he would never be, navigating the secret world of wealthy women who offered comfort, influence, and cash in exchange for his presence. For months, he managed it all. Carefully, secretly, deliberately, he justified every encounter as a necessary evil, a way to protect his family and provide them with a life he had never imagined possible. His mother's health improved, his sister's tuition was paid in full, and small luxuries crept into their once meager household. He felt powerful, alive, and yet constantly on the verge of collapse under the weight of guilt. Ada, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware. She trusted him completely, believing in his honesty and integrity. She had fallen in love with the version of Chaik he allowed her to see, the gentle, ambitious, and devoted young man. And Chaik loved her too. More than anyone in his life had deserved to be loved. He wanted a future with her, a family, a life far from the chaos and moral compromises that had defined his early days in Abuja. Yet, temptation has a way of creeping into the cracks of even the strongest intentions. It began subtly. Neka, the woman who had introduced him to the world of wealthy lovers, continued to call and visit under innocent pretenses. She would arrive at his workshop with her car needing minor repairs, her presence lingering longer than necessary. Her smiles were suggestive, her words always layered with hidden meaning. She sensed his inner conflict and used it with the precision of someone who knew human weakness intimately. One rainy evening, she invited him to her house under the pretense of helping fix her vintage car's engine. The moment he stepped inside, he felt a chill run down his spine. The house was immaculate, filled with modern art, soft lighting, and the faint scent of expensive perfume. Her eyes met his, and for the first time she dropped all pretense. "You've done well, Chaik," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "You're powerful now. Money flows to you like it should have from the start. But you must choose. You can continue, live comfortably, provide for your family, or you can step away, and the life you've built will vanish." Chaik felt trapped. The money, the security, the freedom, it all pulled him toward her, toward the life he had wanted for his mother and sister. Yet, every fiber of his being screamed that he was making a mistake, that one wrong move could destroy everything. And then, everything did. It happened unexpectedly. Chaik had been invited to a private dinner at one of Neka's exclusive gatherings. A small, elegant affair attended by wealthy friends and socialites. Ada had been away on a work trip, and Chaik had rationalized that one evening of compromise would be harmless. But there, among the candlelight and fine wine, he met someone who would change everything. Ada's mother. She was striking, elegant, and powerful in a way that demanded attention. Chaik felt a pull he had never felt before. He tried to resist, reminding himself of Ada and the life they were building together, but the temptation, compounded by years of hardship and survival, overcame him. That night he gave in. The guilt was immediate, sharp, and piercing. Every step he took home felt heavier than the last. He wanted to tell Ada, to confess, but he knew the truth would destroy her, destroy him, destroy the fragile life they were creating. So he buried it, locked it away in the darkest corner of his conscience, and pretended everything was normal. Life continued in this tense rhythm. Chaik and Ada grew closer. Their love blossomed in quiet, intimate moments that Chaik cherished with almost painful intensity. He would come home from his encounters with wealthy women and feel a deep, conflicting warmth in Ada's presence, a love that made his sins feel even more suffocating. Months passed. Chaik's wealth grew. The houses, the cars, the ability to send more money home, it all increased the stakes. He had reached a point where the very survival of his family depended on his secret life. The moral lines he had once drawn so clearly had blurred, and he found himself trapped in a cycle of desire, guilt, and obligation. And then, the unthinkable happened. One afternoon, Ada returned home early from a business trip. Chaik had been delayed at the workshop, and in a moment of carelessness, or perhaps fate, he had left his phone unlocked. Ada picked it up, intending only to check a message, and there it was. A series of texts and images that spelled out every secret he had tried to bury. The world seemed to stop. Her eyes filled with tears, a mix of shock, heartbreak, and rage that made Chaik's stomach twist. He walked into the room, sensing immediately that something had gone terribly wrong. "Chaik, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. He felt the ground give way beneath him. He fell to his knees, words failing him at first. Then, in a torrent of confession, he told her everything. The financial desperation, his sick mother, his sister's unpaid tuition, the first encounter with Neka, the night he met her mother. He admitted the lies, the betrayals, the pain he had caused. Ada listened. At first there was silence, then fury, then tears. She had loved him, trusted him, believed in him. And yet, everything he had done stood as a jagged monument between them. Chaik begged for forgiveness, not just for himself but for the love he still felt for her. He promised he would never betray her trust again, that he would leave the other women behind, that he would devote himself entirely to their life together. It took time, weeks of silence, long conversations filled with tears, and nights of quiet reflection. Ada was hurt, deeply hurt, but she also understood. She knew the sacrifices he had made, the pressures he had faced, and the man he truly was beneath the mistakes. Slowly, cautiously, she forgave him. But forgiveness came with conditions. Chaik had to prove that his love was real, that his heart belonged to Ada and no one else. Every encounter with Neka or any other wealthy woman had to end immediately. The money he had gained through deceit had to be redirected toward legitimate endeavors. He had to rebuild trust from the ground up. It was the hardest test of his life. Each day, he felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him, a constant reminder that even good intentions could lead to devastating consequences. Yet, in Ada's eyes, he found hope. In her patience, he found redemption. And in her love, he discovered the possibility of a life unburdened by secrets and guilt. Chaik realized something fundamental. Survival alone could never bring happiness. Love, honesty, and integrity, the very things he had compromised, were what made life worth living. If you're following Chaik's journey, hit that like button and subscribe, because this part will take us to the ultimate resolution, showing how love, forgiveness, and a fresh start can transform a life forever. You won't want to miss how Chaik and Ada find their peace in a new world. After the storm of revelation and confession, life for Chaik and Ada began slowly, but steadily, to find its rhythm. The air between them, once charged with tension and distrust, softened with understanding and cautious hope. It was not an easy road. Trust, once broken, cannot be rebuilt overnight. Chaik knew this. Every morning, he awoke with the heavy reminder of his past mistakes. But every evening, when he saw Ada's smile, the warmth of her hand in his, and the gentle light in her eyes, he understood why redemption was worth the struggle. Chaik immediately ended all his illicit affairs. Neka, once his most influential mentor in the dangerous world of wealth and temptation, became a figure of his past, a reminder of what he had sacrificed, what he had learned, and what he would never allow himself to become again. He redirected his resources toward his family, ensuring that his mother's health improved steadily and that his sister could focus on her studies without the constant shadow of financial worry. The relief and joy that came from seeing their lives stabilize were immense, and for the first time in years, Chaik felt a weight lift from his shoulders. But there was more to do. He wanted to make a life with Ada that was not just about survival but about dignity, love, and growth. Together, they made the decision to move abroad, to the United Kingdom, where opportunities were plentiful, and the past would not cast its long shadow over their future. It was a leap of faith, fraught with fear, but it was also the start of something extraordinary. The move was not easy. They arrived in London with little more than the money Chaik had saved, his skills as a mechanic, and the dream of a life untainted by secrets. The first few weeks were humbling. The weather was colder than anything Chaik had ever known, and the streets were unfamiliar, crowded with people who moved quickly, with purpose, and often with indifference. Finding work was challenging. Ada, supportive as ever, took a part-time position while Chaik scouted workshops, auto centers, and small businesses where he could offer his skills. Persistence paid off. Within a month, Chaik found a small but promising garage in East London that needed a reliable mechanic. He impressed the owners with his skill, honesty, and dedication. Word spread quickly among the local community, and soon clients were coming from miles away for his expertise. His reputation for precision and integrity, qualities he had always possessed but had struggled to monetize in Abuja, became his greatest asset. Ada worked tirelessly alongside him, managing finances, customer relationships, and even helping with translations and cultural adjustments when needed. Together, they were a team. Each small success was a victory, not just professionally but personally, reinforcing their bond and their shared dream. At night, in their modest apartment, they would sit together, recounting the day's challenges and triumphs. No distractions, no secrets, just the simple intimacy of two people building a life from scratch. Chaik often found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, the temptation, the moral compromises, the betrayal, and ultimately, the forgiveness that had allowed him to find peace. He realized that without those trials, he might never have understood the true meaning of love, responsibility, or redemption. As months turned into years, Chaik's garage flourished. He expanded his services, hired a small team of apprentices, and created a space where honesty, skill, and hard work were celebrated. He never forgot the lessons from his past, that survival without integrity could never bring peace, that love requires trust, and that every choice carries weight. Ada and Chaik grew even closer. They shared dreams of starting a family, of traveling, and of building a legacy together. Their love was no longer tentative. It was steadfast, forged through hardship and strengthened by forgiveness. They spent weekends exploring the city, taking long walks by the Thames, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. A hot cup of coffee in a quiet cafe, a Sunday afternoon in the park, or a shared smile at the end of a long day. Chaik never forgot the family he had left behind in Nigeria. Every month, he sent money home to ensure his mother and sister continued to thrive. He also invested in small community projects near his village, using his experience to help young mechanics find honest work and avoid the moral pitfalls he had once faced. It was his way of giving back, of ensuring that others had the chance to succeed without compromising their values. Years passed, and their life in the UK became stable, joyful, and full of love. Chaik and Ada married officially in a small ceremony, surrounded by friends they had made in London and a few family members who could attend. It was simple, elegant, and entirely theirs. There were no secrets, no betrayals, only a commitment to each other and to the life they had chosen to build. They celebrated milestones together: the first successful year of the garage, Ada's promotion at work, the purchase of their first home. Each achievement was a testament to the strength of their partnership, to the resilience that had carried them through the darkest moments, and to the power of forgiveness and love. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights reflect off the Thames, Chaik turned to Ada and took her hands in his. "We've come a long way," he said softly, "from struggles and mistakes to this peace. I promise to never take it for granted." Ada smiled, her eyes glistening. "We've built this together, Chaik. Every step, every choice, even the hardest ones, led us here. I forgive the past because it brought us to the present, and I love you more for it." In that moment, Chaik realized something profound. Happiness was not a reward for perfection, but a prize for perseverance, courage, and love. They had both survived storms, faced temptations, and navigated the treacherous waters of desire, guilt, and morality. And now, finally, they were free to simply live, to love, to laugh, to dream, and to build a future without fear. Their journey from the dusty streets of Abuja to the bustling avenues of London had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had also been transformative. Chaik understood that redemption is earned, not given, and happiness is sustained not by wealth or opportunity alone, but by honesty, trust, and the courage to face one's past. Together, Chaik and Ada embraced a new life, one defined not by past mistakes, but by the love, integrity, and shared dreams that would guide them into the future. And for the first time, Chaik felt a calm, unwavering peace that he had never known. If you follow Chaik's journey from struggle to redemption, don't forget to like, comment, and share the story. Hit that subscribe button for more emotional, gripping tales that show the power of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Because sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations.